Okay. All right. So now everyone can see what I see. Is that right?
Yep.
Me squiggling like that? Okay. All right. Well, hello, everybody. This is the Getting Started with PODD webinar, part of the ASF Communication Training Series. My name is Mary Louise and I'm in Perth, Australia. So this webinar is for anyone who's interested in getting started with PODD. We'll be talking about some things that might be a bit more Angelman specific than users in other communities, but the information presented and the principles of PODD apply to any person with complex communication needs. Disclaimer, this is not any type of official PODD training. This webinar has nothing to do with Gail Porter or any official PODD trainer. This webinar has come about from interest and questions from the Angelman PODD community and people who want to use PODD. So that's why we're here today. Our agenda is just going to be talking about getting started with the PODD communication books, getting started with PODD on high tech, developing habits for PODD and aided language input. Oh my goodness, spelling mistake, sorry about that. We're going to talk a bit about modelling, and we had a thread on our Facebook Angelman group about families who were a bit further down this journey than the newbies were saying, you know, what was one thing that they wish that they'd known when they were starting. So I've just got a couple of things from families along those lines. If you are interested in getting started with PODD, I highly recommend that you look into PODD training in your country. So these are the websites. There's poddusa.com for North America, podd.eu for Europe and the UK, and in Australia we don't have a central calendar yet listing PODD dates for Australia and New Zealand, but you can go to cpec.org.au/PODD and that will give you some calendar dates, and that has the PODD email there too. So if you want to get started with PODD communication books, what do you need? You need the PODD CDs and you need the board maker. From both available from Mayer Johnson. We have had a number of families and professionals who have tried using Board Maker online with PODD CDs and have found it a bit tricky, a bit difficult, a couple of crashing issues. So at this point in time, a lot of the feedback that we're getting is from families and professionals is they're still preferring to use the Board Maker CDs along with their PODD CDs. Hopefully as glitches get ironed out in Board Maker Online, that will become more accessible to our PODD community too. So let's take a look at these PODD CDs. So I'm going to turn this off. Can you still see that, Amy? All right, sorry. Okay, so in PODD CDs, you have 3 discs. Disc 1, Disc 2, Disc 3. So Disc 1, let's have a look. We've got information, license agreements, and we've got 2 folders, 1 page opening PODD and group PODDs. Let's have a look at Disc 2. 40 keyword PODD, 70 expanded keyword, 100 plus, and there's a MAC info file. And then Disc 3, we have 36 keyword, 48 and 90. So in each PODD disc, there are PODD templates. Now when you're getting started with PODD, it can feel completely overwhelming. You think, well, where do I start? And a lot of families and professionals think, okay, I'm just going to dive right into here and I might choose that one because that's the one I saw another child using. But actually we need to be strategic about it because Gail Porter has put so much information on here and we need to kind of just have a look because actually it makes life a lot easier if we know what we're looking at and what we're looking for. So there's a magnificent PODD manual on here and I highly recommend that you take the time to read it either on here or print it out. This is an epic amount of information for you, but it's going to give you the grounding and the understanding of, behind the theory and the practice involved in PODD and why things are the way they are. The information contained in here is also really beneficial for all our families who are advocating for PODD for their child. So this is a great place to start. Why are we doing what we're doing? One of the other really important things that you need to look at and know about when you're getting started is this file here called Selecting and Customizing Templates. We don't just want to dive in and print out the 12 per page because that's what we saw Sally down the road or Sarah at the conference. We really want to be strategic and think about this. So Gail has written this phenomenal guide of exactly what you need to do when you're getting started. So please don't ignore this. It's there for a reason and it actually is really helpful for us. So if we just take the time to have a read about this, it helps us form make a really informed decision about which PODD template, which PODD book is going to be most suitable for our child, our client or our student. So it takes us through, okay, step 1, select the most appropriate page set, view a range of the information files. All right, so we have a look here, we read all this through, it tells us exactly what we need to start doing. Now we're going to go to that information file, so pretend you've read all this and you've highlighted the bits that you need to read again and the bits that make you go, And for most of our young people with Angelman, we're looking at the one-page opening books. So start here, and one of the misconceptions about PODD books is that you start with the 9 and you move your way up. What I really want you to do is open up the folder for, say, the 9, and you'll see there's the board maker templates. Then there's some construction files, and these are very important because they tell you how to make the thing. What we're interested in at the moment as we go to select and decide which book we're going to do, we need this information file. So here we're going, okay, it's going to tell us a description of the book, what kind of language set it's suitable for. So I want you to read all of these information files. You might read it and think, oh no, actually I think my child needs a bit more language than this, or this really doesn't suit. So let's go back and maybe we'll go and have a look at the 12. So again, we've got the folders, the construction files, and we'll have a look at them later, and the information file. So I might go, oh, 2 to 4 years, yes, that's about the age, language level and age that I'm interested in, and I have my child in mind, and I read all these thinking, yes, that sounds like him, oh, yep, that'd be good. So this information file is really one of your best friends as you're trying to work out which book. So have a look at the different information files and see which one resonates with you about, yes, that book would suit that child best. So if we have a look, we thought, all right, yes, that 12 per page looks good. We're going to read the information file. We're also going to read, before we even get in here, we're going to read the construction file. So we've made an informed decision about what we're doing. We know the information about what we're going to be looking at. In our selecting and customizing, it suggests that step 2, we print the information file for the page set that we've selected, and that we view the page set as we have a look through those templates. So if we've printed out this information file for 12, while we're chucking stuff through the printer, we're going to print out the construction file as well. So let's have a quick look at those. There's 3 of them. Doesn't mean you have to make 3 books. What it's saying is, okay, if you want to construct the 12 per page expanded functions PODD for a child who needs pull-offs for pick up and give or show access, then this is the construction file for you. Side note, very few of our children with Angelman stay with pull-offs for very long. Some children need it to support their initial receptive input. For many children with Angelman, the sensory properties of all the Velcro and the pull-offs override the communication properties of the book at this point. So it's not something you have to start with. Again, it's an informed decision that you're thinking, oh yes, we'll try that. Do I want to use the PODD to be modified for column row scanning access? No, thank you. So I'm going to go for this construction file, which tells me just how to make the generic 12 per page expanded functions. Okay, so I've printed out my information file, I've printed out my construction file, I've had a really good read, and now I can go into the templates. So here I can have a look, and here's my template, page 1A, and my margins are a bit wonky on here because I'm running PODD for Windows in Boardmaker on Mac, so everything's just struggling a bit. Now in here, for those of you who are new to Boardmaker, this is the selecting and customizing template. So this is our little guide for who's who at the zoo. And down here, when we've gone through these steps, there's this little hint that if we want to make it easier to look at the Boardmaker templates, we're using the Control or the Command key and the arrows. So when we're in our PODD, and here we go, Command and arrow, and I'm moving forward. So I can have a look at the information file, and I can have a look at the PODD book and move through it. There's information in the information files and the construction files about customizing the PODD book. So here are all your individual files, the lists, which are going to go on the back of some pages. Again, your information file and your construction file will support you to know what list to go where, as well as the titles. So this is the 17B list that goes on the back of 17A. So this has been made as simple as possible when we read the files beforehand, when we kind of get our head around why things are the way they are. When we slow down, it really does make life easier. I see so many professionals and parents just dive in to start customizing this all of a sudden, and if we just step back for a bit, actually life gets a lot easier because Gail's done all the work for us in telling us how to do it. So here down the bottom we have options. So in options there's extra pages for if I've got a little person in early childhood. So here I've got different pages that need to go into that main group to be replaced. So I'm going to need, in categories, I'm going to need an early childhood kindergarten link or a playgroup link or something. So these ones need to go in, be copied in to there to replace up the 7A and 7B that are here, which don't have any school links on them. So explore the option file, have a look at the construction files and the information files, because it's all there to tell you how to do it. When we're looking at families starting with PODD, the overwhelming thing can lead to sort of a paralysis. If I don't know where to start, so I'm just not going to start. We want you to have these pages and we want you getting them printed out as soon as possible. It does not need to be perfect. It does not need to have every single family member known to man programmed into it. There are some families who think, okay, I don't want to print out just the generic at the moment. I do want to add in brothers and sisters' names. So if we go down to 9A, that's my people page, and again, as you were going through here, you're doing your commands and you're going through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No. Okay, there we go. There's 9A. So it's saying I, me, righto. So in here, I need to write I, me. Oh, I don't know why that's gone weird. Here we go. I, me, Mary Louise. Oh, help if I could spell my name. I, me, Mary Louise. And I'm going to fix that up. Okay, insert names of immediate family. So again, this does not have to be perfect. This is your first draft pod that is going to be scribbled all over and things are going to be added in. But if you really want family members' names in here, and delete that, then this little bloke up here is your friend. Okay, if I want to look for images of people, one of the easiest ways to do it is to type in person. And then here, I go arrow across. Now I start to get all my people. Okay, so I'm going to put in, I've clicked on her, I'm going to give her an alternate name of my sister Katie, and I'm going to, oopsie daisy, I'm going to stick her there. Right, so now she's there. As soon as this is printed out, I can start talking about her later on down the track when we're working on people pages. If we end up on the people page as my child explores the book, then at least I know that Katie's there. But I'm not making a fuss about putting cousins or friends or anyone else in there at the moment because I want this book printed out and ready and going, knowing that I can always add stuff with a Sharpie on later. So let's save that. Now your information file and your construction file are going to tell you how to print it out. So if we go back to the construction file, oops, that's not the right one, there we go. Construction file, again it's telling you all the different lists you need to be aware of. It's telling you how to print it out, how to construct it. This is the construction file, it's telling you exactly where you need to cut out, telling you exactly how you need to laminate. Adding the lists on, where do they go, where are you going to write them, and then how do you deal with the special pages that might be in there, and how do you deal with binding. So all those questions that people have about, oh, how do I do it, what am I doing, how do I make it, it's all in here. All the answers are in here about how you do it. One thing about the laminating is we have who, when they want to get started, they're thinking, well, I don't have the time, the energy or the capacity to laminate at the moment. I want this book printed. I want us to get started. There are some families outside the Angelman community who find that they can just print out a general paper copy, bind that and start using that and scribbling over it. There are very few families in the Angelman community who can print out a paper copy of a PODD book and have it last any reasonable amount of time. So if you don't want to laminate your draft copy, then look into using weatherproof paper, iGauge, Revlar, Monsoon paper, strong, tough weatherproof paper that means you can still get this printed out and happening, but that it is going to be semi-indestructible in the short term. Okay, so let's go. So I hope that all makes sense. If we go into, where's my little, okay, so let me go back to my 12. There are two main accommodations for vision and processing that we see most often used with PODD books in the Angelman community. So the first one is changing the background to black. We find that for some children, just simply changing the background to black means that the symbols pop out more and the children find it easier to visually attend. That's one access change that you can do. Another one that we find helpful for some children is, I'm going to use this column. Let's go for changing the symbols to high contrast. So high contrast symbols are an extra symbol set that you need to purchase from Mayer Johnson, and purchase them online and download. It means that for children with cortical vision impairment or vision processing issues, whoopsie, I've got a double there. Okay, I'm now getting symbols that the child might be able to attend to more. So you can see the difference. If you are looking at making a pod with high contrast symbols, then just as you've seen here, you need to change every single symbol in the book. So those are the two main visual accommodations that we see in the Angelman community in PODD users. All right, so let's get out of here. Don't save that. So again, you're going to go through your construction file, you're going to see how to do it, you're going to print it out, you're going to get started. Let's go to yes, thank you. Okay, so we've had a good old look at the PODD CDs. Okay, we've had a look at the PODD CDs. So just as background information, of course you're going to use the information files to help you make an informed decision. In the Angelman community, what we've found over the last 7-8 years using PODD communication books around the world with people with Angelman, right from 18 months old up to 45 years old. The majority of the one-page opening PODD use is coming from the 12 per page, 16 per page and 20 per page books. 9 per page books are sometimes used by a very few babies and young children with Angelman syndrome. Oh my goodness, my spelling mistakes are terrible, I'm so sorry. But most families find it very difficult to model the 9 per page and prefer to start with the 12. So if you're really thinking, oh, it could be a 9 or a 12, our global knowledge base and our parent experience has said it's best to go for the 12 because it's easier for the parents to model. The 2-page opening books that we see used in families most commonly are the 36 per page, the 40 per page and the 48. There are a few children, older children, teens and adults with Angelman who use a 70 per page PODD. So there's some of the PODD communication books. We've got some families using cable ties or zip ties to bind theirs. We've got families using spiral binding, and you can see here there's this is a PODD book for a young boy who needs the black background and also benefits from having the flashlight to focus his attention when his mum is modelling. When we're getting started with PODD, there are some things that we've found support some families to get started and get using PODD. Some families find that using a stand really helps. There's a video tutorial on YouTube of me making a stand in Corey's kitchen, and so it's there if you need it. PODD stands can be helpful for families who really need to be able to easily and efficiently do one-handed modelling and one-handed page flip. If it's hard to juggle a child and holding the PODD and you need the PODD just there and you need to be able to go backwards and forwards, a stand can help. We've found that in kindergarten centres and dinner tables, sometimes having the PODD standing up means that there's room for other things. Just remember that just because you've got a stand, you don't have to use it, and it doesn't mean you always will use it. Be really mindful that a lot of the children can attend really well to modelling of a PODD that's standing up, but they find it incredibly difficult to access a PODD standing up, because really what we're asking them to do is hold their arm up in space and activate a PODD that's standing straight up. Many of the children in their early days of PODD use, and some of the children even after years, really need their PODD lying flat so that gravity can be their friend and they can access the book and get that really strong proprioceptive feedback from hitting the book with their whole hand or their whole fist, but when it's flat and lying down. So like most things with Angelman, you're just going to have to observe and respond how your child is best attending and accessing and responding to the PODD throughout the day. And what works on Wednesday morning might not work on Wednesday afternoon. What works on Wednesday might not work on Friday. But it's one option that families have found helpful. Some families like to be able to angle their stand, so this is one that the girls in the UK made. They made Velcro, so those white strips of Velcro, and then the back of the PODD just can move forwards and backwards and stick to the Velcro. when we need this kind of adjustable stand with children with Angelman, we've had to flip it. So if you can imagine that the Velcro bits are kind of pointing out towards the back, and instead of the duct tape connection being on the back panel and going forward, it's on the one behind the PODD book, and it's pushing the other way. Because if we've got that, for many children with Angelman, if they've got this pink bit sticking out in front of them like that, that's in their fiddle zone, and then it's just making life incredibly difficult in terms of accessing the PODD and attending to modelling. So again, it's all problem solving that we need to do. When you're getting started with PODD and you're wanting to think about, well, how am I going to have this with me? So these are just some ideas that families have had about having the PODD there all the time, is using a strap. So there's Yvonne, and her son uses light tech and high tech, so she wears them both. There's Tina, and she's carrying the 40 per page. It's comb bound according to the construction files, but she's used zip ties here to attach the laptop strap or the purse strap that she got from the thrift store, so that she's not attaching the strap to the comb binding and therefore pulling the comb binding. When the children have ownership of their PODD, as Cyril does here, they will drag it everywhere, so it helps to have a strap too. So again, we're just looking here. We need to look at the construction file when we're making two-page opening books, using comb binding so the book has a spine, it doesn't flip back on itself, using duct tape, and the Americans have the best duct tape. Duct tape to really make it strong, so combs aren't flying everywhere and pages aren't leaping out. And again, there's Tina being fashionable in her cable ties. So just looking at those visual accommodations, we've got the black background and the high contrast symbols. So here's Charlie's first draft PODD book, a 9 per page. You can see it's tattered and used and wonderful. So that was the first book that was draft book. Let's get it started, let's start modelling. Seeing how the child is attending to this, let's start problem solving what else we could do. So printing out some of the pages with black background and seeing how Charlie responded to that. All this dynamic assessment that happens while we're modelling this and trying other things means that book number 2, a couple of months later, is fully geared up for Charlie's vision and access. But we've now had months of modelling and mucking around with PODD and getting our teeth into it while we're doing this. So we don't have to hold off starting until it's perfect. We just start. So let's have a look at PODD on high tech. PODD on high tech, there's PODD for Grid 3 and PODD for Toby Dynavox Compass. I'm not going to talk a lot about the intricacies of the page sets because Gail Porter has done a phenomenal webinar, an introduction to the Toby Dynavox Compass page sets, which also applies to some of the page sets set up in the grid. So there's this amazing webinar. So like when you were starting with the PODD books, you had a look, you read the manual, you had a look at the information files, you had a look at the construction files to make an informed decision about which book you were going to use. This is your online webinar in order so that you can make an informed decision about what high-tech page set you're going to use. So it's freely available. You can Google Introduction PODD webinar, or you can use the bit.ly link there. There's also the Compass User Guide, a PDF available online. You can Google or get it from the Toby Dynavox website or use the link there. But again, this is helping you make an informed decision about what page set to use, and it helps explain why things are the way they are. If you're using Grid, there's the Grid User Manual. So these are the things that are really important. If you're going to just if you're going to use high tech, then you need to make an informed decision about what you're using and why. So these are the resources that are freely available out there for you to make that decision. So let's take a look just briefly at PODD on Toby Dynavox. So when you open it, you will come up with this menu page. And usually the manual links from here, but it's not working anymore. So hopefully Toby Dunavox can help sort that out. So you see that there's the preschool, the school, and the school ones here. And again, Gail's webinar goes into detail about those and about the difference between the 15 and the 15 plus. So I'm not going to waste any time talking about that today. What I want to cover is if we go into the 15 school, which is the page that's used most commonly by our school students with Angelman. Thinking. Okay, here's my page set. So, like the book, I've got my 1A and 1B are now hiding under chat words, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But I've got similarities to the book, enough that I know how to use this if I've used a book, and that if I've used this, I can use the book. What we need to be mindful of first and foremost in our Angelman community when we're giving this to the children is we need to go up to controls, and then we need to make this safe and stop, put some stops on it so that the children cannot get into settings and play around with things and make life difficult for us later on. So this here is your options triangle, and when I touch the options triangle I can touch modify, then I can touch settings here. So if I just show you, so that settings button takes you into settings. I'm going to go back, so I'll that settings button because I don't want my student getting into settings. Later on, down the track as an operational competence, yes, absolutely, we're teaching the child how to operate settings and things. But right now, in the early days, that's just a recipe for disaster. So again, I'm touching my options triangle and modify and settings. And see here in miscellaneous, I'm going to touch hidden. Now we don't mask vocabulary, we don't hide vocabulary in PODD books, but for our sanity, we hide the settings button. And we also often hide the whiteboard. That's a personal choice. You can have a play around with the whiteboard, what the whiteboard is, but for the vast majority of our families, those two things need to go. So if I go back to the main page. Now when we're using a talker, when using the PODD as dedicated AAC on the iPad, we need to lock the child in. This is not an app that is going to go onto the iPad the same as Minecraft and YouTube. This is a dedicated talker that is just a talker. So for many of our students who are super mega keen on iPads, the talker needs to be in a completely different case. It needs to be in a completely different stand. It needs to be so different to the fun iPad that there is no confusion. We can't take, in the vast majority of the time, we can't take a fun iPad and suddenly turn it into an AAC talking iPad. Because if we lock the child in to this talking app, into the PODD, and they know that YouTube is on there, they know that Minecraft is on there, then this, rather than their voice being power for them, this app is just a barrier that means they can't get what they actually want. So for many families, we've had discussions recently, Christmas is coming up, families and extended families want to know what the child wants, and this is the time when families are saying, well, he really needs a dedicated talker, so let's think about everyone contributing for an iPad and a case, that kind of thing. So I really want to make it very clear that not only if you have high tech, you need a light tech backup, but if you have high tech, it is the talker only, and we lock the child into this, and that's all they know is on that particular iPad. We call it a talker, we don't call it an iPad. Some families call it their words, some families just call it their PODD, but it is not referred to as an iPad in any way, shape or form, especially for our children who are completely and utterly obsessed with iPads. So If you are using a talker on an iPad, then you need to explore what guided access is. Guided access is simply the iOS function that means that you can lock in an app, so it's the app only. So if you Google guided access, it will give you far better webinars on this and how to do it. But what you need to know in, okay, so we want to start, let's just get rid of guided access. Okay, so what we want to do is, you can see up in the on the options, I need to draw, and if I wasn't all sweaty and disgusting, there we go. Okay, I need to draw a little triangle over that because I don't want the child accessing that options button. I don't want them modifying anything. I don't want them getting into settings. And then if I press resume, that area there is grayed out. It's in guided access. The child can't get into any other apps or settings in the iPad, and my settings here is hidden, so now I know that my data and my page set is safe. So I'm just going to, and then I'm going to get out of guided access to do that. Okay, so the other things that come up often are learning how to do backing up and restoring. Really critical that we learn how to do backing up and restoring and that we know what we're doing. If we go to Toby Dynavox webpage, when you buy the PODD app, so all the apps, doesn't matter what app it is, most of them have a way of backing up to a cloud. So some use Dropbox, some use something else. Toby Dynavox have their own cloud. So you need to register and create an account with my Toby Dynavox. And that will give you also access to saving your page sets, sharing your page sets with other people, sharing your page sets with other iPads. You're allowed 5 iPads per account, or 5 devices. And in this support here, if we have a look, oh, there we go. So under resources, I wonder if it will let me in even though I'm not signed in. Okay, well, there we go. Let's sign in. So under our support is under the support resources are videos. So as Toby Dynavox work to increase their videos and increase the amount of videos that are the PODD app specific, but at the moment all we really need to know is how to back up and restore. And so those videos are on the Toby Dynavox page under that settings thing. So I'm not going to wait for that to load because we'll be waiting forever. But down there in resources, you will find videos about how to back up and restore. If you've got any issues or you want any videos, then Toby Dynavox are the people to talk to about that, either online or through this, the community. Whoopsie, sorry, a bit tired. Through the community, there will be a drop-down menu there. Okay, so that will teach you how to do that. The other things that crop up frequently in discussions is how to change voices. Again, there is a video tutorial on Toby Dynavox about that. If you want the a cappella voices, then you need to purchase them through the Toby Dynavox store, and then they will show up on your iPad and you can choose which one. So if we go to download, thinking. No, our internet's struggling. Okay, so that would be how you change your voices. Some of the children need a different access timing or hold time to stop their double tapping. So we use touch enter and set a time, or we use touch exit. So if we go 0.2, done. So that now means that I need to hold my finger there.
I like this. Yummy.
So this can really support the children who scrape the iPad or who have access issues, if you fiddle around with touch enter or touch exit to get the sweet spot. And it's not an exact science, and it can be very tricky, but most of our families have managed to find a sweet spot. Okay, so that's pretty much about it that I'm going to cover now, because otherwise we're going to run out of time. We need to, when we've talked about accommodations for direct access users, visual accommodations for direct access users in the PODD books, if you've got high-tech pods and your child is not yet using a pointer finger, if they're using a whole fist, if they're using a hand, if they're scratching at the iPad and scraping, a key guard can help. So key guards are available online, and you can get clear ones or black ones. You can get them in different thicknesses. Remembering that the goal here is not just independent communication, it's autonomous communication. There are many users in the Angelman community who are able to access their light tech pod books far better than they can currently access their high-tech pod. There's nothing wrong with this. It's not that the book is any less than the app. It's really important that we value whatever method, whatever device the child is using, whether it's high-tech or light-tech. As the child learns to use the high-tech, as they develop the operational competencies, as they learn to manage the changing screens, we need to make sure they still have their light-tech pod book there with them all the time. Okay, so there's nothing wrong if your child is super fantastic with their pod book and really struggling with their high-tech. It's common, okay? So there's nothing wrong with that child. That child's just at a different point in their journey. But our goal is communication. So if you're using a pod book fantastically, brilliant. If you're learning to use a pod book and you're using it sporadically and you're starting to use it expressively, that's brilliant. Okay, so I really want to make it clear that for our teachers and parents who have a student who is not yet using the high-tech as efficiently as they are and effectively as they are using the light-tech, that's A-OK. All right, so you've got the book printed, you've got the app going, you've got the case, you've got the key guard, you've got the strap, you've got the stand, you've got whatever you need. It's not the world's most perfect pod book. You've just printed it out. So what do you do now? We have to break it down and we have to eat this elephant in small bites. We have too many families who are given a pod book by their professionals and said, here you go, you wanted a pod, this is what you wanted, here it is. It's so overwhelming, and at the moment it's just this giant book. It's this giant thing to lug around. So we have to think about how we systematically and strategically support ourselves to use it. So we think about when we're doing the now what, when we're doing the getting started, we think about habits and modelling and expectations. So habits, we want to develop the habits for always having the pod with you. We need to problem solve how this will happen, and this is what everyone in the team needs to do, is problem solve how are we going to have this with us all the time. School needs to problem solve this. You know, we've had schools that have had to problem solve, well, if bathroom break is before lunch, we can't put the pod book on the bathroom floor and then on the lunch table next. So how are we going to have this available there for the child in all these different environments? Daycares need to problem solve how they're going to move the pod around so it's always with the child, and families need to problem solve. You know, life is really busy, life's messy, how are you going to have it with you? And always remembering that you can be the world's best pod user, but if it's not there, then you can't use it. So our goals for the first 2 weeks after we've printed this book is not to use the book. It's simply to have it with us as much as possible throughout the day. We have to develop the habits for always having it with us so that we can use it. So it's problem solving. We have to acknowledge that this is the child's voice. We have to develop the philosophy and the principles and the belief that when I see my child, I see her AAC. When I see her, I see her pod. See me, see my pod. See me, see my AAC. Many of the children often use their AAC more often when they are wearing it. So for some of the children, if we are working on exploring their expressive use, then we can support them to use that with a harness. We need straps and harnesses and things for ourselves so we can have it with us, because remember, this first year of intervention is going to be about us. This is not about the child, this is about us adults, learning to talk to the child in a way that one day they will talk back to us. So for the first 2 weeks, it's about giving yourself permission not to use it, but to carry it everywhere. So again, using a stand, using straps, and here's some photos. There's Nicole and Abby, and Nicole's carrying Abby's iPad to do her modelling. There's Jodie, she's carrying her iPad, the books here, and Sirley currently wears her iPad. And then here's Kevin and Joshua, and they're out repairing the deck, and Joshua's got his pod book with him so that he can boss Kevin around and comment and complain and do everything there, and so that Kevin can model as well. So you've got to have it with you if you're going to use it. So although we're not talking about expressive use of the children at the moment, I want to show you that some of the children are wearing harnesses and AAC carrier bags, and we can discuss the names of these in the ASF groups or the pod groups, but I didn't want to put the names up here in case someone went bankrupt and wasn't on there. But there are specific AAC harnesses. There are specific AAC carrier bags. Some families use binocular harnesses and dual camera harnesses that they get from Amazon. Some families use ski harnesses that you get from online. So any way that the child's talker can be with them as much as possible, fabulous. Okay, so now we've had 2 weeks of getting into the habit of taking it with us. We're at the point where we feel naked without it. We're at the point where if we leave the house without it, we feel it and we run back in and get it. We're problem solving how we're having it as we're walking around the house. Now we need to think about modelling. And again, we're going to break it down into tiny bites. We're going to break down our modelling into weekly or fortnightly focuses. And these weekly focuses, they're not a cop-out. It's not less than. It's not that you have to be perfect, that you have to know this whole book the moment you get it. Breaking it down, breaking our pod interventions down into weekly or fortnightly focuses are a really strategic way for everyone to develop their familiarity with the pod, and for the adults' confidence and competence with their modelling to increase. So remember, this is all about us. We're not even thinking about the kids' expressive use at the moment. So when we're looking at modelling, what are we modelling, and what does it actually look like, and how are the children attending to our modelling? So when we're modelling over the next couple of months, over the next year, when we're immersing this child in an aided language environment, in a pod environment, where we're using the pod to talk to the child, there is zero pressure on the child. Zero pressure on the child to look at it. Zero pressure on the child to use it. We're going to model to the child. We're going to model around the child. And modelling simply means that we're pointing to the symbols as we talk to the child. So this year is about the adults providing receptive input. Always remembering that we give typically developing babies 12 to 18 months of immersion in speech before they speak back to us. So when we're starting pod with a young person with Angelman, or a 15-year-old with Angelman, a 40 to 45-year-old with Angelman, we're going to give them the same respect that it takes a long time to learn this language, and I'm not expecting anything to happen in 4 weeks. I'm not expecting anything to happen in 4 months. If expressive use does start to happen in that time, that's fabulous. But actually for the first year, it's about respecting that that child needs a lot of input. When we're thinking about what we're modelling, what we're pointing to the symbols about, what we're talking about, the big three are: you need someone to talk to, something to talk about, and something to talk with. So as you're modelling, who have you got to talk to in the house? You've got your something to talk with. You've got your pod now. What have you got to talk about? If your child's playing with the blocks, you can sit and talk about the blocks. We're not bossing the child around with the pod. We're not saying you put it in, you take it out, you do, me do. We're saying, oh, wow, you're putting it in. We're talking around the child about what that child's doing. Over the last year, there's been a lot of families who have repeatedly asked for these slides after presentations, and so I wanted to go through with them just briefly now. When you and I first see a PODD page set, or any ASC page set, but we're talking about PODD here, we might have never seen these symbols before. We might have never seen this page set, this device before, but there's one thing that enables us to use it, and that's that we can read the labels. So we know how to model, we know how to point to these symbols as we talk, simply because we can read it. So if you and I had to use this expressively tomorrow, we could, because we can read the labels. Most of the children with Angelman syndrome can't read the labels. They might be getting some early literacy cues, cue them into what that label means. If they've never seen the symbol before and it's all just a bunch of squiggles, then they might be looking at some of the labels for some cues about what that says. So like you and I are looking at this Dutch page set now, and we're using some of our literacy cues to go, well, I know how to spell I, so that must be I. It might be go, that's a bit similar to go. So, and then I've never seen a shoe with spikes like that, but that kind of looks a bit like new, so maybe that's new, and we'd touch it and go, oh yeah, that's new. But our early literacy cues and our little literacy cues don't help us with any of these bigger words. So the only way that we'd learn how to use this page set is if people used it to talk to us. If every time we went to a birthday party, people were touching birthday party, and we'd start mapping on birthday to this. We don't have to learn how to read this yet, but we're starting to map on to this because people are using it around us. The other way that we'd learn to use it is if we used it, every time we touched a symbol, it spoke the word. So we'd need to explore it a lot. Most of the children with Angelman syndrome and most of the adults do not have any literacy cues when they see an AAC page set. So for the vast majority of people with Angelman, when you give them a PODD page set, essentially this is what they're seeing. They have no literacy cues about what is going on. They have never seen these symbols before. So if this is the page set, if this is what the child is seeing, we cannot expect functional, accurate, appropriate use, expressive use of AAC immediately. And actually it's cruel to expect that. The only way we're going to learn to use this page set is if people use it around us to talk to us and to talk to our family, and if we get to babble with this, so that every time I touch this symbol here, it speaks present, and everyone says, oh wow, did you get a present? Everyone responds as if what I said was intentional, because that's how I learn what this means and what that language means. So we act as if the child did it intentionally. That's the only way they're going to learn A, the power of this voice, and B, what those squiggles mean. So when we're modelling, we're talking about providing receptive input. We're pointing to the symbols, we're highlighting the symbols with a flashlight, or we're pulling them off. We're using keywords. The children do not always need to be directly watching you model. It's not going to happen. And it doesn't need to happen. Many of our children have difficulty looking and listening at the same time. They can't coordinate those two sensory processing departments. Many of the children are using their peripheral vision. They're looking out the side. They know what you're doing. We need to do it very calm. We do that thing of fake it till you make it. We act like this is just calm, this is easy, this is what we do. The beautiful thing about PODD is that the children don't have to be watching when you're modelling, because we know that the kids are always listening. And the beautiful thing about PODD is the children are getting repeated exposure through our modelling. They're listening to those pathways. They're listening to us constantly saying, more to say, I like this, it's fabulous. Oh, more to say, I like this, you're so clever. More to say, I like this, you're brilliant. They're hearing those repeated pathways. They're hearing those patterns. So as we work on those patterns, they don't have to be looking at that. They're hearing them. Remembering that in this first year of getting started, of developing a really beautiful receptive environment, it's not about teaching, it's not testing, it's not explicit teaching of this symbol means this. It's us immersing the child in a PODD environment where we are using this to talk to them. So when we look at eating the elephant in tiny bites, we have carried this around for 2 weeks. We might have started using it, we might not. But now our focus is going to be on using chat words, is what we call in Australia, 1A and 1B. Quick chat is what you call 1A and 1B in the US and in this folder here. So pages 1A and 1B, our quick chat or our chat words. This is our focus for the next week or the fortnight, whatever you decide. And again, we are not talking in full sentences. We are modelling keywords. So here I am with my high tech. So across the day, I'm going to be modelling chat words. Oh, I want some more at story time. At breakfast, I'm going to be going chat words. Oh, I think it looks like you want some more. I see you reaching. Chat words, I can help. So I'm not stressing out about making full sentences. I'm letting the words on the page guide me, and I'm across the day giving myself permission to just get familiar for what's here. I might start to combine words. I might start to say, chat words, hurry up, Daddy, I want some more. Oh, Daddy says, wait a minute. Oh, no, it's all finished. So if we look at one page opening book, I can say the same thing. I can sit at the breakfast table going, oh, it looks like you want some more because you've finished what's in your bowl. I'll do it. I'll help you. Oh, no, there's none there. Oh, excuse me, Daddy. I need to get some more. At bedtime, oh, we've finished that story. We need to hurry up and get to sleep. Stop story. Oh, look, the moon's out. All right, it's my turn to say good night. Good night, gorgeous. Turn the page. I love you. So when we start to get familiar with 1A and 1B, we can use these powerful words and phrases across the day. If you're using a 2-page opening book, again, you're just using 1A and 1B. If you want to, you can go further into the book as well. But this is the time now to get really familiar with 1A and 1B. It's the time to get really familiar with, so when you are carrying your PODD book on a strap, that you can start modelling upside down. When someone's got you in a headlock or they've got grabbed onto your hair, that you can, upside down modelling, point to the big red hand and say, stop, I need you to stop. Okay. So developing that familiarity, that confidence and that competence with 1A and 1B. And then after chat words, using the more to say link to get to page 2, we start to focus on the early functions of communication. So again, we're going to do a week on each or 2 weeks on each. So the early functions, we're looking at requesting activities, requesting to go somewhere, requesting to do something, commenting positively, commenting negatively, and complaining. So it's these 6 here and these 6 here, plus we've done chat words. Too often in schools, I'll go in and the teacher is using, I'm telling you something. We don't want that. We want to be modelling kid talk. And I'm telling you something is very adult directive language. We want to be modelling powerful language for the child. We can get to that later, but let's start off with these ones. So here we go. We've got I like this and I think it's. So if you've got an I think it's kind of book, you'd go for that and you'd model positive comments. If you've got an I like this, then you'd do that. So throughout the week, across the day, across the days, in the mornings, oh, I like this. That's fantastic. You've gotten dressed so quickly. Coming home from school. Oh, I've just read in your diary, in your homeschool diary, I like this. You did clever work today. So again, we're focusing on I like this and clever, but we're saying the rest of the words. At dinner time, oh, I like this, yummy. So we're starting to develop that pattern in ourselves, and of course the child is getting the benefit of that targeted modelling as well. So again, this isn't anything less than if you launch into the book all at once, but this is a really strategic way that a lot of families have just really embraced of how to eat this in tiny bites and how to get really familiar with the parts of the pod. So the next week you might go into, I don't like this, and then to something's wrong. So when we're hitting on something's wrong, it's not that we stop modelling other things for the week. By the time we're getting to something's wrong, we find that many of our families are so familiar with chat words that they'll be modelling, uh-oh, finished, more to say, something's wrong, I think you're tired, let's go to bed. So you might be saying, oh, stop, something's wrong, you're really grumpy. So we're starting to combine things. We're getting really confident and competent about our pod use, and we can start to combine using chat words and something's wrong. Chat words and I don't like this. We have many families that now, by the time we get to focus of I want, Friday of I want, where all the vocab is in I want, how to get there. We find families doing things like, uh-oh, on page 1. More to say, something's wrong, you're tired. Go back to page 1. More to say, I want a rest. So you're starting to combine your way around the book. And remembering that, 6-7 weeks ago, this was just a giant book that you were trying to drag around, everyone was telling you how to use and you didn't know how to use and it was all overwhelming, and now you're like, girlfriend, I got this. So it's really important that we give ourselves permission to just slow down, to prepare the book and understand the book before we make the book, to slow down into our weekly little bit. Core word app families pick core words of the week. Our pod families pick pragmatic branches or patterns for the week, and that really, really helps. So again, we can use let's go for the next one, do something, and then we can go on and on. So we've talked about habits, we've talked about modelling. It's really important that you're also modelling how your child is initiating that they have something to say. Oh, please excuse the spelling mistake. So if your child is someone who bangs on his book, to say, oh, I've got something to say, then are you modelling, oh, I'm touching my book, I've got something to say, and then proceeding to say it. If your child calls out to say they've got something to say, are we modelling that too? Are we modelling that before the child is doing it? So we're saying, look, you could do this. Are we saying, hey, I'm using my voice, I've got something to say. Oh, more to say, I like this, you're so clever. Then when we hear the child vocalise and call out, we can say, oh, I can hear your voice. Have you got something to say? Oh, now the child doesn't have to then take up that turn of, actually, I do have something to say. They might have just been using their voice, but we're saying to them, guess what? Your voice is power to say, ooh, I need my book. So at the moment now, I just want to talk a bit about expectations. The biggest question is, when will my child use it? And Gail's presentation at the FAST gala over the weekend reminded us that it can take anywhere from 15 minutes to 4 years, and that's certainly been our experience in the Angelman community. Remembering we give typically developing children 12 to 18 months before we expect expressive chatting from them, so we need to give the same respect to the kids who are learning PODD. And if you've got any families who say, he should be using it now, then just remind them of that picture of all the PODD page in Greek. So, this is what he's saying. I need to really map language onto these squiggles, and he needs to be able to babble with this. And yeah, look, sometimes I'm not sure if he really meant it, but the only way that he's going to learn that this is power for him is if I respond to everything he whacks. So it's going to take time. Time, time and more time. There's going to be hills and valleys and ebbs and flows, ups and downs and ins and outs. And there's going to be chatty times for your child and quiet times. There's going to be chatty times and quiet times for you too in your modelling. Keep modelling, keep going. Just keep telling yourself, just keep swimming. If you had a really, iffy modelling day, if you're feeling a bit flat, give yourself permission. Just start again the next day, okay? You can't get bogged down in, I didn't do any modelling today, okay? Think about, all right, what am I focusing on this week? I'm focusing on I like this, then I need to think about that for tomorrow and just get back up each morning and try. We had a discussion thread on the Facebook page about what did you wish you'd known then that you know now. So I'm going to read these out for those people that are sitting in the car at the soccer listening rather than watching, or those people that are doing the dishes or feeding kids and are hearing rather than watching. So Jodie says, I wish I'd known that Cyrilay would go through ups and downs in her expressive use of PODD, and that really is okay. That even though the periods of time where her expressive use is very, very little, they're hard and they're discouraging, and I usually used to stress out about it. I have to remember to take this time to up my modelling and to keep providing opportunities for her to communicate without the expectation that she uses it. Every time this has happened, so every time Cyrilay's expressive use has dwindled, and I know it will happen again, Cyrilay comes back using even more language than before. I remember when I first read that this was happening to someone farther along the journey than me, and it made me realise it's okay and that I didn't need to stress out about it so much. Tracy says, don't get cocky, kid. Modelling is not about showing off your skills and knowledge of a system. It's about saying the most relevant thing that is tangible to your child and keeping it short to hold their interest. And just start. No procrastination about becoming an expert. Our children are very forgiving of mistakes. It teaches them that mistakes are okay. It's good for their self-confidence. And Tracy says, don't compromise autonomy. Use the lists and add words to the talker. So again, in the information files and the instruction files, you'll find out about the lists. Add words to them. Communication systems are dynamic. They're growing. They need new words. They need words and language that is your family dialogue. If your family dialogue, if you call pillows puddos, like we did in my house, because I called a puddo, called it a puddo when I was a kid, and now, 37 years later, we still call it a puddo. Stick it in the book. Your child needs to be able to have that funny little language that's family specific. If meerkat's not in the book and you're at the zoo, you need to add meerkat to the list because you're going to want to talk about it when you get home. So that's what the lists are there for. Tina says, another big one is not just to repeat, but rather add to what your child says or communicates in other ways. For example, if Finn grabs some cheese, not using his PODD, but the actual cheese, then I don't just model, I want cheese in my PODD, as that is disrespecting his other more efficient mode of communication. Instead, you could use the PODD to model, I like this, it's yummy, the cheese. So yes, we want to be able to model, I want cheese at some opportunities, because if the cheese isn't there, we want to be able to show this is how you could say it. But again, in that opportunity, there's a beautiful time then to say, I like this yummy cheese. Gordon says, use it, it will work. And Corey says, while I knew I had permission to stick with quick chat and simpler sentences, I think I felt like I was copping out by not being more elaborate in how I used the book early on. It took me a long time to really believe and internalise that using keywords to model just at or above Lily Grace's level was actually not just okay, but the right thing to do. The same thing for making mistakes. It took me a while to not just feel okay about making mistakes, but to really get how important it was to make them, and that I could model how to repair and move on from them. Lily Grace also has taught me how important it is to keep up with modelling and for others to use the PODD to talk. When her use goes down, it usually relates to a drop in others using the PODD to talk. I really believe that we're sending her a message about how valued and respected her language is by how often we use it, by how we use it, and who is and isn't using it. Her patience with me is truly amazing. Keisha says, my number one hindsight advice is to understand that when your child walks away from your modelling, it does not necessarily mean they are disinterested like your gut tells you. I also wish I had fully understood how much more Riley needed to reflect on topics. I had to learn that as we went along. And Jennifer says, that building confidence with 1 or 2 branch starters at a time was what she wished that she'd known then. So we often say that, communication is messy. You can't plan it. It just happens. And in Angelman families, communication is messy literally. And that beautiful, pristine PODD book that you're going to print out isn't going to stay that way for long, and that's good. We want books that are loved and treasured and dragged everywhere. These are well-loved, well-used books. These books are a child's voice. They go everywhere, absolutely everywhere, every day with the child. If your communication is messy, if you're eating chocolate cake for dinner and you want to talk about it, your talk is going to get chocolate cake on it, and that's okay. That's why we have wipes. That's why we have waterproof cases. This is life. So where to from here? If you've got the PODD CDs, read the user guides and the manual. If you're using the PODD app at the moment, go back and watch Gail's webinar, read the user guides, and have a really good reflection of, am I using the right page set? And make sure that you know sort of the theory and things behind it, because this is going to support you not only in your PODD use but in your advocating for other people to use the PODD. Look into attending the PODD training, and the biggest thing is make the book. It doesn't have to be perfect, just make it. Get the app. It doesn't have to be customised yet, just get it and start. Join the online PODD and Angelman community. So we have a family group, PODD and Angelman syndrome, and we have a professionals group. In other PODD groups, there's PODD Europe, and PODD Europe is, the administrator is Rosie Clark, who is the UK PODD trainer. And then there's also the ASF Communication Training Series, where we can discuss PODD-specific stuff as well as all the other things that we've talked about in this series. So in closing, I'd just like to say an enormous thank you to Gail Porter for inventing this beautiful system and for all the freely available resources that are out there. I'd like to say thank you to Linda Burkhart for her support of Angelman families across North America and online, and to Rosie Clark for all her support of Angelman families in the UK and Europe and online. I'd like to say a massive thank you to all the PODD families in the global Angelman community, and thank you to the Angelman Syndrome Foundation for this communication training series and the opportunity to do this webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Louise. That was a great presentation. It's not only fun listening to your Australian accent, but all of the images and everything that you used. It was really a great presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everyone else, too, for joining us today. We will have